A movie set entirely in space with aliens and robots and more, and yet for some reason it's still all perplexingly pirate themed for no reason at all? Let's go! Welcome to Worldbuilding Films, where we analyze the world settings and rules of films and TV shows to see if they work, if they don't, and if not, how they could be improved to enhance their stories. And today, we're talking about none other than Walt Disney's Treasure Planet. Quite possibly one of the most criminally underrated and definitely the most mistreated film across their history. Seriously, there's a whole history behind the scenes of this flick, so feel free to go check it out. But we're here to discuss, of course, its world building, which, yeah, in case you didn't tell, is literally the plot and themes of the classic Treasure Island story, but in space! And as absolutely fun as the idea is, it doesn't seem to have any particular reason for this setting to exist. It just does. No further questions needed. But if you know me by now, you know I ain't gonna let that fly at all. So that's what we're going to talk about here today, to see if we can find some way to justify this crazy ass setting in a more grounded way and justify its world building. And trust me, this is going to be a tricky one because there's so little to go with here. Although, while I will still try my best,
I'm fluent in flatula, Jim. Took 2 years of it in high school.
I think I can cut myself a little bit of slack this time. Also, needless to say, but spoiler alert for a movie that you probably saw a billion times as a kid by now, but still. And in the meantime, if you want to see more great world building analysis, feel free to check out the other videos on the channel and click the subscribe button for more content. Also guys, I kindly ask you to click on the bell as well, because I found out that many of these videos weren't even being recommended and that the algorithm really is as broken as everyone says. This would be the best way to ensure that you get notified of these videos when they come out and help the channel grow. It would be very much appreciated. But alright, enough chit chat for now and let's get right to it. This is the world building review of Walt Disney's Treasure Planet. The Etherium. So yeah, as I mentioned, this one's going to be a little bit tricky. Cause of all the franchises that have wacky worlds, or, well, galaxies in this case, this is perplexingly one of the ones that has the least bit of information at all. Sure, there's the movie itself, but not that much lore behind it. There was supposed to be a sequel at one point, but it got canned so hard that there's no real info I could find there either. Even the wikis don't have that much to offer. Honestly, the only extra material that can be used was an old video game called Treasure Planet Battle at Procyon, which admittedly does have some lore, but honestly not that much. Not to mention, I do remember playing it once in high school and it ended up being super damn boring as well. Yeesh. But okay, let's take a step back and see what we can work with. In the film, the setting is just that. Literally the plot of Treasure Island, which by the way I can at least ignore since it's not relevant to our point here today. But instead of being on Earth in the 1700s, it's set across an entire galaxy where not only humans but also all sorts of wacky aliens exist. Robots are just as intelligent as everyone else.
Moving violation 90, paragraph
6.
Thank you.
Don't mention it.
For better or worse. There's some sci-fi techs like holograms and laser guns, and literally all the spaceships are just, well, regular human sea ships, but in space. The directors specifically even mentioned that they applied a 70-30 rule here, with the 70% being the pirate theme. And hell, speaking of outer space, even that's kind of confusing here. Cause yeah, there's no gravity unless the ships activate their artificial gravity on them. So, okay, at least that's explained. But there's literal air in space. You can survive it so much that there's literal animals like space whales and such just floating around, already having adapted to it. Hell, they even make a point of showcasing that there's a difference between day and night here. Again, in space. How? Man, I got my work cut out for myself here. So yeah, this is one of those cases where the directors just said, "Shut up!" and went with it. So I could have just shrugged it off. But there actually is one small detail that is apparently canon, and that is the Etherium. The Etherium, as pointed out in the video game and admittedly was briefly mentioned in the opening narration,
on the clearest of nights, when the winds of the Etherium were calm and peaceful,
see, is an area in outer space in this galaxy that literally has an atmosphere enough to allow the existence of life forms to swim/fly across it, can allow various plant life to thrive even on random asteroids, and can easily allow breathing even if you're just floating aimlessly away in it. Even if that is, kind of terrifying on its own, but whatever. Not only that, but apparently there are also currents of Etherium, where it even has a sort of pull or force enough that ships can use it to travel faster in specific directions. And the Etherium is sort of webbed across the galaxy, literally being a sort of trade route for these various civilizations. So, holy crap. Yeah, they actually did think about this after all. Just frustratingly the absolute barest minimum to actually hold on to something while not being free to just shrug it off. You guys are lucky you made Aladdin, otherwise I'd be blasting your asses to Kingdom Come 2. Okay, fine, we do have a base to work on after all, and it's enough to justify at least a few things. It explains how there's oxygen in space, the fact that an atmosphere technically can cause the light of nearby stars to create enough refraction to sort of make a difference between night and day, even if nighttime should just mean getting away from those stars. The fact that these space whales can move through it with fins because the atmosphere can cause enough drag force, etc. Although this would create a few small issues with other planets like Montresor. Because regular planets are usually big enough to hold in an entire atmosphere because of its gravity. But if the atmosphere is already in space outside of it, then on regular planets it would be paradoxically too dense to be habitable for various life forms. So in this case I think changes would be needed. Like maybe places such as the Benbow Inn are built on big asteroids instead of planets, so they don't have enough gravity to thicken the atmosphere too much. These guys can create artificial gravity anyway, so that's fine. Or perhaps planets would have really dense clouds at the bottom with buildings rising right above them, Jetson style. And then, well, if there is enough of an atmosphere in space that everything around becomes like the blue sky, then planets would be illuminated constantly from all sides. So forget having any kind of nighttime at all. Meaning, I guess all planets would need to have some sort of like a giant shield hovering right above them, or at the very least very near their stars to try and sort of simulate something approximating night and day. I can only imagine how terrible their circadian rhythms would be otherwise. So, okay, that would be the fix needed for planets, but it's still not enough. So now, let's tackle the most widespread commodity in this setting, such as spaceships. So, cool as they are, I have a few issues with these ships. Because if the Etherium really is like this, then why are the spaceships designed like this? And I don't mean why do they look like pirate ships specifically, we'll get to that later, don't worry. But more so, why still have an exposed main deck with the solar sails high above, which by the way are totally fine, no issues there, especially since they do collect into batteries down below for safety just in case, so fine. And down below, the main body still seems to be designed like this. Like, ships here on Earth have this design because they're meant to keep a separation between the air and the water below. Two very differently dense materials. And the specific shape helps pierce through water in a hydrodynamic way. Even ignoring the pirate theme, why have this shape in space when, frankly, the atmosphere here seems to be the same in every direction? This isn't exactly a problem in the Battle for Procyon game, cause there the ships move only in 2D space, pretending as if what's underneath them was literally like a denser air or whatever. But that's for the game mechanic purposes and is not the case in the actual film itself. Yeah, we need to clarify things here. So, I think we can justify it like this. if this Etherium really is what people are using, what if instead of being like basically rivers in space, they were shaped more like tubes of atmosphere in space? And mind you, they wouldn't be small. No. I mean, these tubes would be huge. Maybe even like a dozen of light years in thickness or something, enough for entire solar systems to easily fit inside of it. This way there can be plenty of room for all sorts of carbon life forms to roam around freely. Spaceships can actually move in 3D space if they want to, and most importantly, it can still sort of justify these sea ship designs. Because in order to hold this shape, these tubes of interstellar atmosphere would have to be thicker and denser around the very edges. So dense, in fact, that perhaps that is where nebulas and overall space clouds can form, and most importantly can be sort of a cushion for these ships to traverse through. Yes, they can move around wherever they want, but since some of these Etherium tubes have their own currents that move in specific directions, and it's exactly here at the very edges where ships can have the strongest push to travel faster. Plus, there's another benefit. Because our real-life ships also have something called a keel, which is a large fin that protrudes from the bottom of ships. The purpose of these keels is to be sort of a stabilizer, so that if a ship has a strong force on its sails, the keel will act as a buffer by counteracting with the density of the water down below, thus preventing the ship from toppling over. Because if they did topple over, that would be really bad news, as any of the crews could fall out and end up lost in the deep, dark, black, scary void of deep space. Hey, speaking of deep, black, scary voids, this video is sponsored by me. Are you sure this is how it works? Because yes, as a reminder, I wrote a book. This one, right here. See? I put it up here because I'm a wascoey wabbit. As you can see, the title of this book is called Grim. It is a dark suspense fantasy horror about a teenager who has the strange ability of being able to see none other than the Grim Reaper. And one day, when tragedy strikes, the Reaper offers the teenager a terrible deal in order to save someone he loves. It's a dark story full of suspense, explores the horrors of the unknown, that really tests your morality, and shows you how far someone who is desperate is willing to go for good or bad. I worked very hard on this book for a very long time, and I'm actually very happy to see that the reviews so far have been surprisingly good. And I would deeply appreciate if you could give this a read as well and let me know what you think of it, because I have many more stories to tell in the future. It is officially out on Amazon, and the link is right down below in the description. And in case you didn't hear, this is available in English and Italian at the time of releasing this video, and the German version is available for pre-order. The links to all 3 languages are available in the description down below. And now that we've talked about this deep, dark, adult tale about horror and morality, let's go back to talking about the fun Disney movie about pirates in space. Why am I like this? So, if we said the Etherium was this intergalactic web of atmospheric tubes, and the edges were the most dense parts, then the spaceships in the film should have had a keel as well, interacting with the denser areas below, allowing everything to be stable. It's not an absolute requirement, and I'm not saying it's a perfect solution, but it could be an extra hand just in case. Hey, if you gotta go with pirates in space, might as well go all the way, right? So, okay, maybe this is one of the reasons why they still need to keep these designs after all. Although, look, honestly, I would still implement a couple more changes. Like, for example, there could be at the very least a thin skeletal structure right above the decks as an emergency grappling point just in case gravity shuts off. And I would add at least a couple more sails protruding from the bottom of the ship's hull. Kinda like the designs of Captain Flint's ship, come to think about it. The only one that seems to make sense in this case. Because if they're using solar power anyway, that stuff is all around them. And while gravity is less of an issue here, I see no reason why all ships don't have this very same design, both as an extra thrust and extra stabilization. Alright then, ships are taken care of. But there's still the big question that I know you're all waiting for. And that is, why pirates of all things? I get that the directors really wanted to go with this idea of the rule of cool.
I really want to go.
To the point that they were begging Disney to make it for like 15 years or something. I get it, trust me, I totally do. But in universe, of all the aesthetics they could have gone for, why oh why does this setting of aliens and more have a 1700s theme? Is there some lore or something to this? Kinda. The only real info I could find is that, again, this galaxy is ruled by the Terran Empire. So, yeah, Earth has literally taken control. There's even the English monarchy still. But, like, why? There's clear proof that there's aliens and sentient robots and laser guns and spaceships and almost all sorts of sci-fi shenanigans that the golden age of piracy would have never been able to survive, much less overpower. So how did they do it? Well, there might be a clue here after all, and that is the ancient civilization that actually created Treasure Planet in the first place. Yeah, remember that detail? When they reach the planet, Jim and the others end up in Ben's hideout, and Doppler even remarks on the fact that there are strange markings inside.
Look at these markings. They're identical to the ones on the map. I suspect these are the hieroglyphic remnants of an ancient culture.
But we never got any more details than that. No info on who left those markings, what they say, or, for that matter, who even created the entirety of Treasure Planet in the first place. Because remember, this isn't a regular planet, but actually a gigantic planet-sized machine that just so happens to contain the treasure Flint stole over the course of his life. But that's it. That's all we know. Even the wiki just says it was created by some ancient mysterious alien race, and that's it. Oh, god damn it. Alright, this is just way too little information to go on. So if any of you have any extra information, please let me know in the comments down below. But, as is, just so you know, I'm gonna take a fair bit of liberty here. And yes, I think I have a solution. So, bear with me for a bit, because I have an entire timeline ready to help justify all of this, starting with none other than the ancient civilization. That's right. The thing that's the least explained might have been the one that started it all. So, again, this is not explained anywhere, but it's my own personal theory on how things might have gone to help explain all of this. So, let's take a look. I think that in this galaxy, there actually used to be an ancient civilization that ruled over everything. For our purposes here today, it doesn't really matter what shape or size they were, only that they were so advanced that they transcended all kinds of life. They truly had reached the classic high-end stage 3 level of civilization, and might have even reached like the perfect alien society, perhaps using powerful AIs or robots or whatever that were at the height of their potential. It was a perfect utopia, and they could basically do anything they wanted. Hell, maybe they were even this universe's equivalent of Starfleet, except even more advanced. So much so, they tried to share this with the other civilizations across the galaxy. But that was easier said than done. Because if they were this Starfleet-esque type of civilization, they also knew that just going to other civilizations and just giving them advanced technology could easily go wrong if unprepared. But at the same time, outer space is just so damn inhospitable to life unless you advance. So, they went the other way. They decided that they would create a device. One so powerful that it would have actually created habitable space in outer space. And this machine would have ended up becoming none other than Treasure Planet itself. Again, this thing technically isn't a regular planet made of rock, but actually a planet-sized machine. Nothing but technology that goes to the very core. So yes, I personally think that this massive piece of hardware was meant to render outer space within this galaxy as hospitable as possible. More specifically, this planet-sized device, which I'm going to keep calling Treasure Planet just for convenience sakes by the way, would have emitted powerful bursts of energy from it that would have affected various elements needed to make room for life in outer space in the first place. First off, for example, an atmosphere with oxygen, nitrogen, argon, and carbon dioxide. Second, a sudden heat wave that would actually combat the freezing temperatures of deep space, enough to create at least an acceptably warm temperature that one could survive in. Third, a burst of hydrogen and oxygen specifically in order to create clouds of water, so that yes, even that can be found in space. Fourth, enough vegetation that can survive even the greatest depths of space, and possibly can survive it with little water in case there aren't enough of these clouds. Fifth, a series of wormholes or portals that would allow a much easier and faster access to each part of the galaxy, as was shown with the portal Flint used to escape easily with the loot that he stole. And sixth, a super jump in evolution, so that many life forms could already be adapted to survive in this new kind of interstellar environment and not worry about waiting millions of years for that to happen. So yes, we can say that these were the ingredients chosen to create the perfect little galactic-sized home. But something went wrong. Since it's such a powerful endeavor, I think this machine might have not been able to handle such a powerful task after all. And perhaps the process was only half completed before being disrupted entirely, causing instead an accidental and unintended destructive wave. It would have only had time to fully create, say, the temperature, water, and atmospheric parts of the experiment, and thus, yes, it actually created the Etherium across the galaxy in the first place. But when it came to the evolutionary time jump, that was in order too big to fill. And so, the experiment backfired. When that part about time and evolution burst out, it would have actually done the opposite. First off, annihilating that ancient civilization on the planet in the first place. Hence why they suddenly disappeared with only a few traces. And furthermore, it would have caused a wave that would have disrupted any and all technological advancements, even across other interplanetary species. We could actually justify this even more, cause remember what Treasure Planet actually looks like? It's a single solitary planet that actually has 2 rings, kind of like Saturn, but these rings are kind of strange. They're first off not on the same axis, crossing each other like, well, ironically like a big X, cause X marks the spot. Get it? Yeah, you get it. But objectively cool as this design is, it kinda doesn't make sense. I looked around online and there doesn't seem to be any kind of phenomenon that at least we know of that can justify having these rings in this shape. They should have been just perpendicular to each other, because planetary rings are like that specifically due to debris being caught in the direction of the planet's orbit. So why is one of them tilted like this? And second, really take a look here. One of the rings is your classic one made of space debris. Okay, fine. But the other one is actually made of this strange green glowing energy. But we never really see what this energy is or what it's for or anything like that. It's just left there as a pretty ornament, sure, but that's it. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's actually kinda hard to justify this. So, I figured we could go the other way around and go even crazier with this. What if the original Treasure Planet actually had multiple more rings around it, each made of very powerful energies, all tilted in different directions and with different colors, and they actually represented each one of the various aspects that the planet was supposed to release into the galaxy to make outer space hospitable. And each time they activated, they were supposed to be released as powerful waves across said galaxy. But when the evolutionary time one went haywire, it ended up killing the original ancient civilization that created it in the first place, and perhaps put the entire planet just barely out of sync with time. Kinda like that one episode of Doctor Who, so that it would be trapped in its own pocket time dimension and be absolutely and fully unreachable unless someone had a piece or key of the original planet to be able to find and access it in the first place. Which, yes, would actually have allowed Treasure Planet to indeed become this mysterious place that no one has been able to find in over a century. Come on guys, let's be real here. I know the galaxy is big, but these fools are super used to traveling with really fast spaceships, and it always felt a little too convenient that the planet was just just a little further away if you don't happen to know where to look.
All that treasure is only a boat ride away.
I always found that very unsatisfying, especially when you have full sci-fi stuff to exploit here. But if it was just barely out of sync with time, then hell yeah, no wonder it would have been this great big mystery that no one, not even all these civilizations with pretty advanced technology, could ever figure out. But anyway, back to the rings. Yeah, I think then that the reason Treasure Planet looks like this is because there was just one more ring, maybe like the vegetation one, that just happened to never have the chance to be fully released into the galaxy and just got stuck there, eternally waiting. And why would I think it would be the Ring of Vegetation? 'Cause since it couldn't be released, it left its influence on Treasure Planet itself. And that's why we see that its entire surface was actually filled with all these alien forests on a planet that's made of metal. Plus, if you think about it, we don't even really see any animals or whatever on this planet despite all the plant life. But it would make sense if there just hadn't been a fauna ring that was released in the first place. Or at least that one went haywire. So, yes, considering what we have, I truly do think this would be the best way to explain how and why the planet is the way it is. And with all of this in mind, we can now use this as the base to explain the main selling point of the whole damn film. Why pirates? And thus, we finally enter our last topic, which is none other than the Terran Empire. That's right. As mentioned multiple times by now, this whole movie shows an entire galactic force that is a mix between sci-fi elements, but also very specifically a 1700s human aesthetic. Like, a lot of it. Which, again, is cool, but never properly addressed. And if you know me by now, we definitely can't just let that be. Pfft, silly. So, let's get into the meat of things. The first question to justify this is this actually our universe? Because we do have humans, and it's pretty heavily implied that England and all the surrounding aesthetic is indeed right there. Plus, again, this is the Terran Empire. Terra, Earth, get it? So, I think it's a pretty safe bet to say that this is indeed our universe. Yes. Second, what time period are we in? Is this indeed in the 1700s? Because if Earth went through the usual history we went to in our real universe, in what possible way could they have kept this aesthetic when they reached other intergalactic civilizations? Or, I don't know, would they have suddenly conquered around in space during this era? How would they have accomplished that back then? That's silly, right? You'd need a really big MacGuffin to make that happen. But I think that was exactly the case. So, let's take this one step at a time. I think the origin of the setting actually was in the 1700s on Earth, but of course in a different parallel timeline compared to ours. So, yeah, we're talking about an alternate history here. At the same time, there was the ancient civilization we mentioned somewhere far off that was the biggest, most advanced race out there, but the galaxy was still peppered with other alien races that were less benevolent and were more intent on conquering and invading other planets. And thus, I think this is exactly what happened. In this timeline, Earth actually did have an alien invasion in the past. Think like War of the Worlds, but during the pirate era. Neat concept, huh? Except in this case, the aliens would have had a full immunity against any Earth bacteria, and humans would have had even less of a fighting chance against them. It would have been an absolute surefire defeat, but Earth got lucky. Because it would have been exactly in this moment that the ancient civilization would have activated the time and evolution ring of Treasure Planet. And since, like we said, it backfired, this sudden burst across the galaxy would have actually disrupted all the alien technology of all the other alien races, no matter how advanced they were. All their hardware would have still been there and actually could have still worked, sure, but it was their software that would have been fried. And since these advanced aliens would have been so used to relying on their technology exclusively when they were invading Earth, said technology would have stopped working at the very worst time possible. And thus, humans instead grabbed this opportunity and took control over the invaders because they were far more adept at using much more basic and analog technology like, sails and rudimentary muskets at best. And they were right in the period in which rough, cutthroat pirates were all the rage. What should have been an absolute surefire win for the invaders ended up being the absolute worst moment they could have chosen to conquer. Talk about the tables turning. Thus, ever since, Earth, and back then England in particular since it was the biggest force on the planet, took all this brand new alien technology, forced the aliens to tell them how said technology worked, and thus took control into their own hands instead. It would have taken some time for them to properly learn everything, sure, but as soon as they did, they would have had the entire galaxy for the taking. And thus, the Terran Empire was born. And the events that we see in the film actually would have been like, 2 or 3 centuries after this galactic event. Which kinda makes sense considering that Captain Flint's events were like a century before, and you would need like at least an extra century before then for the Empire to properly expand with this new technology. So yeah, with this idea, I think that the Treasure Planet film itself is ironically set in our universe and in our present day and time. This theory can help explain a couple of other things too. Cause the reason why the pirate aesthetic would have remained is more of a psychological tactic on behalf of the Terran Empire. Cause yes, they would take advantage of spaceships, holograms, laser guns, and way more sci-fi technology, but they would have kept the pirate aesthetic as a symbol. A sort of calling card for the Empire. To make sure they were as absolutely and undeniably recognizable to all the other civilizations that humans were now the top conquerors. The pirate theme would have been the ultimate branding for what ended up being the greatest Uno reverse card in all of freaking time and space. Jeez, and here we thought the English colonization couldn't be dialed up any further. So yes, this would have been the reason why they would have kept the pirate aesthetic against all odds. Oh, and there can be an extra fun detail as well. Because if all alien software was suddenly nullified because of the accidental activation of Treasure Planet, that doesn't mean they would never replicate it again. And thus, attempts would be made to create other artificial intelligences under the newly formed Terran Empire. Except, now that it's on their terms and no one else's, they wouldn't know all the proper details of what constitutes a proper AI system and frankly wouldn't care. And thus, it could explain why, despite there now being robots, they're not, well, as intelligent as robots ought to be. In fact, they seem to be overall as fallible as any other human.
Moving violation 90, paragraph.
6.
Thank you.
Don't mention it.
Hell, you know what? I'm not even done, because there's more things we can take advantage of here too. Since this is a new galaxy where all the cards are suddenly being reshuffled across multiple civilizations, the Terran Empire would start conquering pretty much whatever it could. And frankly, only conquering. It's such a mindset at this point that they wouldn't even bother building anything anymore. Not even Montresor's spaceport. Apparently actually called Crescentia, by the way. Yes, you would think that this place was actually built by all these civilizations to be sort of a really funky meeting point for all sorts of trade in the galaxy, but I don't think so. I think it already existed on its own. Cause, let's be real here. This is obviously like one of the coolest shots in the film, and definitely the most iconic and marketable one. It's an awesome idea, a port that actually looks like a crescent moon in the distance. I love it, don't get me wrong, but why build a place like this in the shape of a crescent moon? Yeah, it's in space, so technically gravity isn't an issue and it could be any shape, but why this? Or hell, why not go full circle and make, well, an actual full circle? Aside from the obvious cool gimmick, what could possibly be the reason behind this design? Well, that's the thing. I don't think it was designed to be a spaceport in the first place. Oh no. With everything that we said so far, I think that Crescentia actually used to be one of the many pieces of Treasure Planet itself. More specifically, remember how I said the planet was designed to make these rings burst outward and rewrite the galaxy? Well, if you think about it, the most peculiar part of the planet is at the very core that has this sort of nucleus that's kept constantly afloat with these energy beams. Well, what if the original mechanism had a series of giant, pincers around the nucleus that would have been there specifically to activate the various rings? And perhaps when the rings went haywire, all of these giant mechanical pincers or whatever actually got destroyed or, at best, shot off from the planet into the void of space. And one of them was actually what ended up being Crescentia, a massive mechanical body whose semicircular shape, if you think about it, seems to overall match the shape and scale of the core of Treasure Planet. And mind you, if I had to be really anal about this, admittedly it doesn't seem to match super perfectly if we compare their scales with their zoom shots, but they're frankly close enough that we can say that either the rings needed to be a little bit bigger or it was just a minor animation error. Cause other than that, come on, they're very similar in scale. So yes, this can count as well then. Crescentia could have been one of the devices wrapped around the core of Treasure Planet to help it achieve its mission, but got blasted away and was repurposed to become the Terran Empire's new spaceport, with no one having any idea of what it was to begin with. And the best part? All of this could still fit with the theme of the entire film. Think about it. This is based on the classic novel Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, where the point was pretty much having a fun adventure finding this super valuable treasure. But with all of this proposition of mine in mind, why would this empire still give a damn about gold of all things when there's this one great big floating priceless celestial body? Well, gold will still be valuable in this universe because it's what the original English Empire valued. So they would have enforced that same ideal into every other alien species as well when it became the Terran Empire. Even none other than Captain Flint, the one who somehow got his hands on a piece of the ancient civilization's technology, the map, and used it to steal and plunder as much gold as possible for himself and just buried it on top of the core of Treasure Planet. These are people who thought they made it big, but were sitting on something far more valuable without ever realizing it. Even if, by the end, it was too late to find that out anyway. In a way, it would thematically resonate even with the relationship of the characters, such as Jim Hawkins and Long John Silver. People who had a great desire for something and were willing to sacrifice anything for it, only to realize that it wasn't actually what they needed. They actually sought something deeper, more complex, and right under their noses, such as the simple act of suddenly having a brand new space, physical or emotional, to live in that wasn't there before. Everyone thought that gold was the most important thing without ever realizing that there was something far more valuable right under them, in the same way the characters searched for fame and fortune when what they truly needed might have just been someone you can trust. And what better way to merge these two layers of world and character than by gluing them with one main strong theme? The notion that, cheesy as it might sound, it really is true that sometimes the greatest treasure isn't what we think it is, and is located in the place where you least expected. Although a solar surfboard can't hurt either. God, I want that so bad! And that, folks, was the world building review of Walt Disney's Treasure Planet. Yeah, they really don't make them like they used to, huh? Granted, I'll admit that as a kid I found this enjoyable enough and, well, that's it. Mainly because pirates aren't my personal taste, to be honest. But at the same time, I must say, the more I watch it, the more it grows on me, and the more I realize that maybe this was actually more special than I gave it credit for. Yeah, it really asks you to close an eye, or two, or four to make this setting work, and just wants to have fun, but it still does so surprisingly well. Although, most importantly, it's ironically the iconic gimmick here that was hiding what was truly special about it. And that is a simple desire to belong and the lengths that one takes to find that special feeling, regardless if it's in the right or wrong way. And while it's by no means perfect and still definitely has some issues, it still kind of baffles me that Disney was so willing to sabotage this at the time just so it could officially close its 2D department. Yeah, look that up. And then they say piracy shouldn't be encouraged. I'm still glad to see that, despite Disney's best efforts, Treasure Planet still has a very strong and loyal fan base, and I hope that one day it gets the proper love and respect that it deserves. Despite its flaws, especially on the world building side, this is truly one of those rare stories whose X really marks the right spot. Anyway, that's all for today, folks. What do you think? Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I talking out of my ass? Maybe. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Please join my Patreon right down here below to help support what I do here. Don't forget to join my Discord server for further discussions, and follow me on my Instagram page for further updates. The links to both of them are down below. And if there's any other franchise whose world building you'd like analyzed, let me know. Until next time, keep building worlds!